So welcome everybody to the first Purple Flag briefing of 2024. We're hoping to try and regularize this, if that's the right word to use. So something like an assessor briefing, maybe within a few weeks of each round of assessments, so that we can do 3 each time or each year. And I think, just to sort of summarize the real purpose of this is, it is called briefing, it's not called training. It is about everybody coming together, and obviously we're going to set out some of the things that are housekeeping issues or issues that have been raised either through the panel or by individuals or by assessors that we can put in front of you, and we can all discuss them. And if you have anything that you want to say, positive or negative, please shout out, because that's really the nub of what we want to do. It's about being progressive now with Purple Flag and making sure that we get as close as possible, I suppose, to answering the subjective question, which is that we are all going out and we're all seeing things differently as we go to different assessments. And it would be great if we can just tidy that up and keep that as tight as we possibly can, while accepting that we're all entitled as assessors to have our own views, so long as we're working within the Purple Flag criteria. So that's not to diminish anybody's individual way of looking at things. So before we start on those sort of housekeeping issues, I think we're just going to give a brief update for anyone who's not aware of where we are in terms of growth. It's not stagnant as far as the UK is concerned. We've got a little bit of growth within the UK, but it's not huge. But we're hoping that as we sort of continue to show, particularly the international area of growth, that we'll have more people and more towns and cities in the UK, either who were Purple Flag entrants or who are wishing to become an entrant, then to get on board. So going back to the international one, really, I think starting off with Sydney. Laura, please jump in if I leave something out, or you might need to take over with the Netherlands, because I think you know more about that than I do. But certainly Sydney or New South Wales, we have York, Clarence, Kent as the first accredited zone, followed by Parramatta, and then Lakemba, and now Marrickville. So there've been quite a few challenges for New South Wales and the team to do this, and it's really commendable what they've actually achieved within a relatively short space of time, and taking on board Purple Flag and taking on board the accreditation process, plus having to adapt it, because obviously what's UK based is not the same as what you might find in a city that's the whole way around the other side of the world, and different ways of doing things, definitely. And they've tried to do all of that and succeeded in pretty much everything in that process. I think York, Clarence, Kent was pretty straightforward. Equally, maybe Parramatta. Lakemba, a really interesting district, and the assessors, I think, were a little bit unsure about how they were going to get through this one, because it's a Muslim centre, but it came up really, really well. A fantastic accreditation for them. Obviously, no alcohol, or probably, as I'm aware, minimal alcohol, if any at all. And it makes you think, to us, I suppose, working in the West or in our own sort of city centre areas, where alcohol is one of the problems, the issues, and, if you like, part of the culture and the sort of the joy. But to go into a district like that and come out with a very, very good report, and I think the assessors were very thorough in their sort of summation of where Lakemba would be, and surprised at what a great area that was. Marrickville, we're still waiting for total outcome on that. That was the last one, and that had really thrown up quite a few challenges, not least because it's quite a small area. And there's been a few discussions about Marrickville, but definitely there's no doubt the New South Wales team will be working their way through that and doing a review currently of where they are, for Sydney and what part they might play in a widening structure, not only for New South Wales, but maybe for Australia as a whole. Malta is the second one, and we're really pleased to say that Malta are going for their first accreditation. That will be in either March or first week in April. And this is Patcherville, St. Julian's. If people who've been to Malta know the area well, quite a exciting part of the island. I know it's smaller than the Isle of Wight, but it's certainly punching over its weight in terms of the growth of Valletta, Sliema, and the Patcherville area. Some really interesting architecture going up and very, very vibrant nightlife, and an awful lot happening there. And I think this is, you know, I don't want to set out what could happen in that application, but it's certainly beginning to look like a very good application for Malta. Netherlands, Laura, I think that's fairly recent, if I'm right. So
yeah, happy to
on that one.
Yeah, of course. So in December, OG and I had a joint meeting with Svenska Stadskärna. So they do the Swedish Purple Flag, and we essentially met a lot of different placemakers across sort of Netherlands, Belgium, and basically we're just trying to explain to them what the Purple Flag process is like, what it entails, and what benefits it's had. So it does seem like this is the start of an ongoing conversation, that there is appetite for that to kind of expand further across Europe. So we're still in the sort of the beginning stages of that. I think currently it's just a lot of information gathering, but it does seem quite positive, the conversations that we've had thus far. So it does look like down the line there is, you know, potential for some further expansions across Europe, which is really great to see. Good job.
Thanks, Laura. I mean, you know, the good thing is we don't really need to talk about it. The good thing is that the wider the scope we have for Purple Flag, and the more international flavour that we have to it, the better it is for all of us in terms of positioning Purple Flag and getting people to understand what it's about. So if it has the same reach as blue flags and green flags, I think we're getting there in terms of the UK, but some places might say, well, we need a little bit more work on that internally, but we're certainly going to be looking much better and much stronger as a brand, if you like, if we have this international flavour on board with us. Okay, any questions on any of that, or anything anybody wants to add? No, that sounds quite good. So sorry, new John, documentation.
Sorry, John, just I wanted to check yourself and Laura with Malta and even the preliminary stuff with the Netherlands. Are they looking to do kind of what Sweden did, which is basically copy a model and set up their own accreditation body, or are they looking to kind of like affiliate to the ATCM and have the ATCM Purple Flag assessors kind of do training and assessments early on?
As far as Malta, oh sorry, yeah, carry on.
No, I was just going to say from the Netherlands sort of side of it, I think we're still kind of discussing what's the best way to do that, because I think having one body for all of Europe would probably be quite maybe quite challenging. So I think we're still kind of in the beginning conversations of, is it easier for there to maybe be an organisation in the Netherlands to kind of take it over for everyone there, or if there will be one sort of central body, if that would be ourselves. We're not quite sure at the moment, but you know, as we kind of get further down the conversation, we'll obviously update you guys as to where, if there's maybe some trips to the Netherlands on the cards for some assessors, we'll keep using the loop on that.
Wouldn't object. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. On Malta, there aren't. Well, there are a few areas outside of Patcherville that could be included, but at the moment, this will definitely be a UK administered area. So it will be UK assessors traveling to Malta for. I mean, in fairness, you know, there's a bit much difference between flying out to Valletta than it does, or flying out to Malta than it does to Ireland or even Scotland or whatever. You know, it's similar sort of travel situation. And I don't think they probably will see that they will have enough growth within the island to justify doing it for themselves, but they have suggested there's an interest with them in the fact that they're part of the EU, that they would happily take on a role to support other places in Europe if that was an option that the ATCM wanted to take out. So there's quite a lot at play there, but at the moment, obviously, the focus for them is getting that first application through, and relying on UK ATCM and Laura, of course, to supervise, monitor, and provide all the support that they need. So that is, any other questions? So yeah,
Sorry, John.
Yes.
John, can I just ask, what is the latest figure on the Swedish towns and cities that have got Purple Flag now?
Sorry, on which?
On the Swedish locations
Oh.
that have Purple Flag. I tell you why
Yeah,
I'm asking. So this morning I've had a request from our communications team. The Swedish press have been in touch with the council regarding our experience of Eurovision last year, and in particular Liverpool's nighttime economy. So obviously we're going back with information there, but what I've told our press team to do is focus in on Purple Flag, you know, so get Purple Flag in, and so that's why I'd be interested to know how many sort of ballpark even locations have got it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll pass that one to Laura. That's why I
Yeah.
did actually hear your question the first time. I was just giving it time to get onto a computer and find out what the answer was.
I think for the Swedish areas, I think roughly it's about 30 or so. But what I'll do after this, Kenny, Bjorn and the team not too long ago had sent over kind of a graphic of how many places they have, where they are, and the ones that are in progress. So I can send that over to you so you can give that to the comms team, if that'll be helpful.
Right, that's really interesting, Kenny. That's good. Okay, so documentation. I mean, this new documentation that we've really just started. It'll be interesting to see what the feedback is from people. I think we did do some of the key changes last time. I will quickly run through, and you can find this on the entrance resource pack or the assessors briefing. But the way the documentation is listed now is, so for a new entry, you will expect as assessors to see the snapshot, and that's the only time you'll see it. A self-assessment chart, the Purple Flag map, and the KPI document. So that's the new entry. Then obviously the next one that will come up after that is the interim renewal, where we do the interim renewal chart. So that's the normal self-assessment chart you'd expect to have. The KPI document showing all the key performance indicators, and the Purple Flag map, again, because that should show any changes that have taken place from the previous assessment. And then finally, on the full renewal, we have the full renewal chart, so the self-assessment again, then the overnight check form. So that will be the form that we expect applicants to use to do a check before completing the self-assessment chart. In a way, I don't know if any of you have seen this yet. I think some of you may have done, but it basically should be telling us a bit more nuts and bolts about what individual towns are doing before they fill in that self-assessment on a night out. Some of the more negative aspects, I suppose, that they might find, and then see what actions they've put in place to change that before the assessment takes place. So that's really the purpose of the overnight check. Shouldn't be a lengthy document, should be quite a quick one to read through. We're not looking at essays on the overnight check. So that's full renewal chart, overnight check document, KPI form again, same as before, and again the Purple Flag map in case there are any changes to it. And it might be worth, as assessors, if you're going into that initial welcome meeting, you ask the question, you know, have you made any changes if they've not been notified on that map, so that we make sure that we're keeping on top of any changes that are occurring. This might be a sort of Laura John show in terms of the key changes on the documents, because they differ. I don't really want to sort of go over ones that we've done before. I think one of the ones for me was a change in terms of asking within the KPI documents, and I suppose I'm talking more about crime here than maybe anything else. We don't want to ask any longer about what is the continuous improvement in your crime figures, simply because that's in most cases not sustainable, and I can't see that anyone is ever going to get down to zero. And if you do, where do you improve from there? So the key thing to understand as assessors, what we want to find out is, we're not looking for continuous improvement necessarily, but if it isn't continuous improvement, what is the applicant doing to manage any downward change or upward change in data, any negative change in data, and have they fully understood what that is? Are they clear about what they need to do and why that's happening? And if they have, then they might not get as good a mark as if they're showing a continuous improvement, but we shouldn't be taking marks off for them if that's the case. You know, it's pretty clear sometimes you go to an applicant and they say, well, we have no idea why that's happening, and to be honest with you, we're not too worried. Then that would be cause for concern for me. But if they're saying, yes, we're aware of it, these are the reasons why it's happening, could be down to data changes or police reporting changes, whatever it is, and this is what we're doing to help, then I would say, well, okay, that's pretty positive. I think we've had this one before about using bullet points, trying to get a use of bullet points in every form, because we now are saying we really want to have 100 words max per attribute, 50 words optimum, really. And it's not that many words, actually, if you think about it, when you're writing it down and showing what your word count is. So we're asking both applicants and assessors to be as concise as possible without losing important detail. I appreciate that. But to be as concise as possible so that it's easier for everyone to read, and we're getting to sort of the nub of the main points, as opposed to sort of drifting around the edges, which we do sometimes, including me. Other things, sort of certain attributes, I mean, have been brought up to date where changes have been made, in particularly post-pandemic. But wellbeing services, for instance, we used to ask for public conveniences. Now it's public conveniences or alternative schemes. If it's in appeal or early evening, we've added the sporting and leisure opportunity as an extra in there. So we're looking to try and increase leisure as an area that should be a key part of Purple Flag and the Purple Flag offer, especially in the evening, not necessarily looking at it 2 o'clock in the morning, but certainly in that early evening period, which of course, you know, is a core area for us wanting within the UK particularly to get animation into our town centres in that early evening period. I don't know, is there anything else, Laura, that comes to mind?
I think probably just two changes that come to mind that are maybe a wee bit important is the map times have been changed. So now it's anything after 5 p.m. should be represented on the map as opposed to 8 p.m. So you're capturing more of that kind of early evening activity. So it was previously 8, now 5. And I think another one, the KPI2, alcohol and health, seems to be data that's difficult to get for a lot of places. And when they do get data, it might not actually be representative of the Purple Flag area. If your A&E is, for example, you know, miles outside of a city, it's maybe not the most helpful. So we've now included data for things like safe zones, if there's maybe triage services within the centre, to be able for applicants to include that, because it will give probably more of an accurate snapshot of what's actually happening on the ground on sort of Fridays and Saturdays. So we're hoping that in kind of making that a bit more flexible and, you know, giving it a bit more breadth, that applicants will find that easier, but it'll be a more useful tool for yourselves when you're going out and doing assessments to get a better picture of what's actually happening around sort of alcohol and health on a Friday and Saturday. I'd say they were probably the two bigger ones for me, John.
Thank you. Does anybody have any sort of comments on any of these? Because you know, sometimes we look at them, particularly in the panel, and maybe you know, is there a question as to how long we go on pursuing a KPI that towns and cities can't really meet, or whether we can improve it somehow or find a way to to make that data or that particular criteria more meaningful, because at the moment that KPI2 has been drifting around since the start, 2008, and we haven't really yet got many places who are able to provide something meaningful on it. I think I'm right in saying, Laura. And that's, I mean, for me, that's a bit of a frustration, because I'm just writing the same old thing in every report that I do. So I don't know if anybody else has a view on that.
I just say that it's good to hear that, because the HSE, our health service executive, won't engage in sharing that data. They've refused any Purple Flag town in Ireland. So I think that's a very sensible move. And I'm just talking with Damon here. We're already thinking of different things we can put in under a kind of an alcohol and health heading that would be very much more relevant than even if we did get A&E data, which, as you say, Laura, wouldn't really be represented the Purple Flag area, probably be represented the whole of North Dublin or what have you. So no, that's really welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, that's useful. And if you do have anything, any ideas on that you sort of formulate, if there's any chance we could have a look at it and maybe a quick discussion, then that could be useful as well, and see how that fits with everybody else. Don't have anyone else in on that one. Okay. So that is key changes, more or less. Probably just to finish on that, actually, just to make you aware, every time we did these key changes, which is why we're reluctant to do too many, we have to change the core agenda chart, the entrance resource pack, and the assessors briefing pack, and make sure that the same comments are listed in each. So it was a fairly sort of titanic job when we were approaching it through middle of last year. And we're certainly not perfect. So if you pick up any of those things that aren't quite working or aren't quite right, particularly when you're out in the field, as it were, please do let us know, and we can make those corrections. Laura?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, John. So I think this is the second round that we've used the documentation for both assessors and for applicants. And I think the formatting, some are coming back fine, some I think need a bit of a tweak. So it is something we're looking at. We're kind of hoping that we can go down the way of it can be like essentially just a text box for you to enter your comments, as opposed to being on like a Word template, to kind of remove, because I get it's really frustrating when you're trying to sort of enter stuff in and the template starts kind of going a bit skew-iff. So we are kind of looking at that, because I know that has been a wee bit of feedback that the forms themselves are maybe look nicer than they maybe did before, but can maybe still be a wee bit challenging to fill in. So we are looking at that hopefully for sort of the next iteration as we're going through the year to kind of fine tune these wee things and just make the process a bit easier for everyone. But I just want to add that in, John.
Yep, thank you very much. I did raise this with Laura and OJ, with the prospect of having these online as well, and they both laughed hysterically. And I think this is down to as much cost as well as time and who we have to do these things. But I think that's something that we still would have on the agenda. It would be great to be able to do these things more simply and use IT obviously to our advantage in order to make it a little bit easier for everyone to use. Colin.
Yeah, thank you, John. Just one thing, going back to the forms. I think there's a tendency in some cases from some applicants to put some strategy and policy onto the overnight check. I think we should encourage them really just to concentrate on what they see on the night, and then keep the policy and strategy to their main application, because they are repeating themselves and using up valuable space on the overnight check. So I think we should be encouraging more of a first-hand check of what they see on the night for that.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. I think I've seen that as well, and maybe that's more our not fault, but our need to highlight that to any of the applicants that we send the overnight check form to when they're coming through for full renewal, and to highlight the fact that yes, this is about, you know, saw rusty bins in square, action point, highways to change around, you know, whatever. as opposed, as you say, to strategy and policy, which is very much in the self-assessment. Yeah, thanks for that, Colin. Kenny?
Yeah, just one over the composition table as well. Obviously, that's changed in this new documentation as well. And again, I've seen a couple of different versions of the data that's being supplied in it, including, I have to say, the one that I compiled myself for our interim submission as well. Can you just clarify or go over those tables? Because it's changed, because it was always, again, if I've got this right, it was always the changes in the amount of new bars and venues coming on stream, whereas these are now a comparison between 1 year and a year of your choosing, if that's correct.
Okay, I need to have a check back on that. The whole point about composition was looking at change over time, because that's something that does take quite a long time to have, again, for that data to become meaningful. And I'm talking, 5 or 6 years or more.
Yeah.
And not really about just pubs and clubs, but about the diversity. So it was really, composition was to hit the diversity of a destination. Is it becoming more cultural? Is it becoming, or if it's that kind of town, is it becoming more sustainable in terms of green energies? Is it, all those things sort of should come under composition in terms of venues and venue types, more theatres, more cinemas, less large nightclubs maybe. So that's what my interpretation of it was. So I've not done that very well, but so I'd have to go back and have a look at what we're saying now. Is that's not quite what we're
yeah, I mean, it's just being presented in a completely different way and a different format. So we're now asking for percentages.
I think I know what you're on about.
Yeah.
Do you mean like so you'll obviously have your table that will just list the venues, and then there'll be sort of the table below where you can put the year, the amount of venues, and then the percentage?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have another look and just compare what we had previous to what we have now and just see what the difference is. I mean, in terms of other submissions, what I would presume we would usually see is, like, say, for example, 2019 number, 2020 number, 2021, however many venues, and then just how much that percentage makes up of all the venues. So, for example, if it was traditional pubs and you had, I don't know, maybe like 100 venues in total, and that had 10, you would just give the percentage of 10 over how many in total. But I'll have a wee look at both of them just to see if there's a way we can make that clearer and a bit less confusing. So thank you so much for raising that, and we'll have a wee check for when we next send the documents out, if we can sort of tweak that a wee bit.
I think it's just clarification, really, unless it's just me.
No, I think you're right. I think it might be clarification. I mean, certainly it may just be the case. Certainly I use percentages for Bournemouth because I find it easy over quite a long period of time to show what the percentage change is. And I can do that from the spreadsheet because it's been going so long now. I can just take it out very simply and decide which year, as you're saying, that it's selecting 1 year against another as opposed to whole years in a row. And you can do it either way, but it's quite nice to see a graph that just shows what happened in 2009, if you can do that, to how that town and city looks like in terms of composition in 2023-24, because that amount of change will show the direction of travel, and that really is what most of the KPI data is looking at. To be honest, we don't really look at figures, do we, as such? We're looking at seeing what the direction of travel is through these key performance indicators, because we want to show that Purple Flag is making an impression on all of those 7 areas. So I think we may have not maybe made that clear in terms of this particular chart. So I think Laura and I will have a quick close look at that one and see if we can improve on that. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the things to just add on to that is, if you have time, and appreciate, we don't all have plenty of time to do it, but it probably doesn't take too long. Maybe going through that core agenda chart, the applicant's resource pack and the entrance resource pack, the entrance resource pack and the assessor's resource pack or briefing pack, and just have a read through and see if there's anything in there that helps to sort of jog your mind as to what the applicant has to do and what we're expected to do, because sometimes I find that refresh really does help, especially just before going out to an assessment, just to get a view on what that new documentation is asking for and what we're asking for and what we anticipate hopefully having to achieve. Is there anything more than that? No, I don't think so. I've got that. Yeah, then there was the next item was about presentations, which is a great love of mine or hate, depending on what's happening. So our presentation's happening earlier because I think we've had a few people coming back in and saying they seem to be getting earlier. So the question is, is this the experience for assessors, and how do you feel about it? Something that could be created on the timing and content of presentations, and also maybe we'll have a little discussion about the itinerary as well. So I'm sort of throwing that open at this stage. See if there's anyone here who's raised that as an issue. I think when we first started, I would say 5 p.m. was the standard, normal, stroke ideal time to start. Only because if you expect it to last an hour, and it's not the presentation actually, it's more the question and answer session, because we only want really short presentations. If it's lasting an hour, that means you're out in town at 6 o'clock, which is that early evening period that we want to have a look at and we consider a key period. So if they're happening earlier than 5, that's making for a longer evening, but I don't know. It is down to assessors to decide actually what time that starts, not down to the applicant, but I'll throw that open, see if anybody has any ideas about that, or if they've found that it has been sort of tweaking in earlier. Colin?
I haven't experienced any before 5 o'clock. I think it's a reasonable start time. I don't think it would be practical to have it any earlier for a Friday assessment, especially for those of us as well that are working on Fridays. So that's the very earliest, I think. And the point I was going to make, which you've just made, John, is that we want to get out to check on this very difficult to quantify early evening economy. And if they've got something good for us to see on that, we don't want to miss it through being involved in questions and answers in the boardroom or whatever. So I think 5 o'clock as a working start, as far as I'm concerned, would be okay, 5 to 5:30.
Brilliant. Thank you, Colin. Nick?
Yeah, I've found the last few I've done have been around 5 anyway, and that does seem to be the ideal time. I think the biggest challenge is trying to just get people to be quiet a bit, really, because they excel in their presentations, and it's just trying to tone that down a little bit, get on to the questions and answers, and then get out. I think that's probably the bigger challenge, but that's where it's our role as assessors to control that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I mean, I really would want to emphasize that point. And I know that I've been into those presentations where I've literally just had to stop someone and say, I'm sorry, but I've got to close it off now because I've only got 45 minutes left and I've got 50 minutes of questions to ask. So, and I want to get out at 6 o'clock, as you say. And we're perfectly entitled to do that, perfectly entitled to put our foot down. And I suppose the easiest way to do that in a way is to preempt it. So when we're talking to them about the itinerary and about the presentation, to really clarify at that point in your email back to them, looking forward to coming over to wherever it is, please make sure you keep your welcome presentation brief, as I have a lot of questions for you. I don't know, something along those lines, and then they'll also be aware that you're in charge of it. Any more comments on that one? Okay, I think that's good. I can't really see many people at the moment because the sun's coming through my window, and I should have cleaned my my screen off. But I've got a nice sort of blurry screen of everyone. And
Yeah,
I
you're
have to say,
fading
I'm really
into
sorry.
our backgrounds here as we speak, John.
I'm really sorry, but
At least the sun's shining where you are.
well, I mean, that's partly the point. I'm not going to pull that curtain across or the blind. I've got to keep that sun coming in, partly because it's keeping my heating energies low. Lovely. Yeah. Okay. Housekeeping. Yeah, there's a few comments about staying out and seeing the dispersal. We were having a lot of assessors reports coming back in saying that they'd finished at 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were sort of looking around at each other thinking, well, this is a big city, you know, maybe we should be asking assessors to stay out there at least for that earlier part of dispersal. And I think maybe, you know, it's one of those things that we all probably finding that by 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, if there's not a huge amount happening, then it's not so interesting. Whereas in other cities, you don't even realize what the time is at 3 o'clock in the morning because it's been so busy and there's so many things to do and see. So it is a bit of a mix and match. If there's nothing there, then by all means, you know, that's it, call it a day, go to bed. You know, but if it is busy and we do need to see that dispersal period, then definitely we should be staying out there that little bit longer to cover it. There is a thing also about getting up in the morning to have breakfast and review the report with us. I mean, I don't think as an assessor with my shadow or other lead assessor, I don't think we've ever done that really, or not for a long time, simply because, you know, travel home and all the rest of it, and you're getting up quite late. And if that's the case and you're getting to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're expected to start reviewing the town over a bowl of cornflakes, you know, I don't think we can have both. So you know, by all means, hang around till late, have a late breakfast, and no need to have that review session. We can do that later on by email or on screen or whatever. But if we can start to cover those later periods, at least till say, you know, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, if the town is still busy at that time and we need to see what's going on at that particular moment. Then hands up on that one. I think some more positive feedback and ensure not leaving. So okay, let's deal with the more positive feedback first. So sometimes we get a report that is just about the negatives. If you can find positives, because most towns and cities do have those positives, it would be great to see. I know what we do at the end of the report is probably right in terms of balance, that we're looking at key areas that need to be addressed, and we don't want to miss any of those. Quite often there aren't any positive feedbacks in that last section on the back of the report. Sometimes just one or two. Rarely do we cover more than that. And that's sort of a bit of a shame really, because there's a lot of hard work, certainly from my point of view as an applicant, I would say, that goes into putting together the assessment documentation and all the organization that has to go behind it. Then it would be nice to be sort of rewarded by the good things that do come out of that. Plus also the fact that maybe in the accreditation panel, we might see something that's really positive that could be shared work. And that has happened on occasion as well. And we use those things that you put down as assessors to bring back to the panel and say, that's really good work. Can we do a case study? Can we do something with it? Can we use that information to share it around the Purple Flag family? So that's the sort of the main reason on that one, I think. There was also not leaving minimal detail, and I think that sort of comes down to writing something in an attribute, and then in the attribute that follows, it says, please see above. And I think, you know, we really want to have some feedback to show that assessors are looking at each attribute individually and not just sort of slamming it as a follow-on from one to another. And we did say 100 words maximum, 50 words optimum. So we're not looking to increase just the number of words for the sake of it, but just trying to get the mind to work on each attribute and give us a little bit more detail, maybe sometimes than we get in some of them. Bit of a pull me, push you kind of thing on that. And this might be an area, the next one, that people may have some comments on, but it's about considering visible policing and the relevance of visible policing to individual places. And this can sort of ride into the subjectivity question a little bit as well, because some people might view it, particularly if it's someone with a police background, or two assessors with a police and licensing background, for instance, going in, may well look at a highly visible police force in certain areas, and maybe that's the only way of looking at it. But certainly there are some towns and destinations where we've seen criticism for not having a visible police force, but they're areas that probably we wouldn't expect to require one. So it's just that question of getting the balance right, I suppose, in terms of policing, and of course a lot of that will be down to the individual police forces themselves, who often say to me, no, I'm not going to change the way that we police our town centres because of Purple Flag. I'm still going to send out 5 highly visible vehicles to patrol up and down all evening, and that's fine. But again, I don't. Does anybody have a view on that in terms of it? Am I sort of trying to hit the right balance in subjectivity here, or do some of us feel that we should be saying a little bit more about it, or having a more visible police force? Mr. Ireland.
Thank you. I think you're hitting the right balance personally. I've been in various assessments now. Some forces have a pulsing system where they all literally have teams that come in and out. Some have dedicated resources. Some have very flexible, and actually dependent on the issues for that town centre, actually mean that actually a visible police presence isn't the way to go. Equally, now more and more we're now seeing sort of more should we say sort of covert policing elements, certainly regards to around safeguarding and that sort of thing. So actually there may well be a policing presence, but it may not be as visible as we would traditionally expect. So I think it is about getting that balance right.
Yep, thanks, Tony. Just sort of adding on to that, I suppose also we need to in making that assessment, try and think as well about what are the impacts of the effectiveness of the camera operation in individual towns, effectiveness of door security, and cameras as well on venues, and how that all works, because if all of that is very good, then that may mean that the need for higher visibility police is no longer necessary. So just maybe it's a case of just thinking about that a little bit more broadly when you're doing when you're looking at that sort of safety element in well-being right at the start of the form, the assessor's form. Was there? I think did someone else put their hand up? I'm not sure. No. Okay. Well, I think we covered that one. Hopefully. Thanks, Tony, for that. Checking itinerary and maps. This is really just a little bit about what we were saying earlier in terms of assessor control. We saw something recently, I think, where someone had said in their assessment that they weren't happy with the way that the itinerary was run out. And they waited really until the end of that itinerary session to make that comment. And it is up to us to control the itinerary as well. So they send you through the itinerary, you look through it. And I mean, to take a stupid example, we're looking at on an itinerary where the retail operation is being looked at 2 o'clock in the morning and the nightclubs are at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, quite clearly, you know, that needs to switch around. But it is a case of looking at the finer detail on some of those itineraries and making sure that we are happy with that itinerary and how it's set out. I do accept as well, of course, that, you know, every applicant will have a reason as to why they want to take you to a certain place at a certain time. So that has to be understood as well, because I think someone said earlier, you know, we need to allow them to show off their destination and be able to show us the good, you know, the good and the great about it. But it's just that little bit of control over the itinerary where you think it might be going off course, and it's something you can do on the night as well. And I think some assessors, I think most assessors are aware of this, that you are in control of it to that extent. But I think maybe some aren't, in the sense that you can stop something halfway through 9 o'clock in the evening, just say, actually, I want to change it at this point, let's do something else. So it was just checking on that. As far as maps are concerned, looking at the map and seeing what works within it, and just checking that everything that's sort of listed on that map as an advantage is actually something that is open and happening on that night if it's within the PF area. And it can be quite flexible, the map, you know, it can be adjustable. You know, we can suggest to them that they can change the map if they find that they've forgotten something or they need to put something out. As it happens at the moment, that shouldn't happen prior to an assessment. So you're given the map and that is it. So it'd be something that could be changed for the next assessment. It has, however, been raised in Merrickville in Sydney, interestingly, because this was quite a small area. And there was a thought there that the assessors could go out of the area and have a look at parts of the Purple Flag area outside of the map, simply because it was so small. As it stands for us, that's not how it should work, but I do think it is maybe something we should have a discussion about, and we'll probably have it down as a Purple Flag panel point for the next panel at the end of this month. So if you have any comment on that now, you know, whether we should make that more flexible already, or whether you want to leave it for the panel to have a discussion on and come back. But really be happy to have any thoughts from assessors as to what you think about making it more flexible in terms of the map area. I think it's one of those things where we have always said, you know, they've got to set it out at the beginning. It's critical. They've got to be shown to be thinking about it. It's not a police map or an urban map or a council map. You know, it is strictly a Purple Flag map. So they've got to have their own thoughts about it. But you know, that flexibility, I don't know. Colin.
Yeah, you've just the second that answered that point, John. Thanks. I was just going to say sometimes sometimes the maps are very difficult for the applicants to configure because they want to include some good points. So they seem to be including a wider circle than from the earlier years I was doing this, but that's okay. And I think providing that they've got some sort of boundary, even if it's a wide boundary, and perhaps parts of it aren't including anything of particular interest, but if they need to include a particular location in it, I think it's fine. But as you say, I think we should have something concrete to go on rather than going off at a tangent outside the boundary that they've suggested, really.
Okay, that's good feedback. Thanks very much, Laura.
Yeah, just to say that we've had a few applicants do their Purple Flag maps through Google Maps. So having various layers for the different sort of things to look for, like restaurants, bars, and it's so helpful for, well, I mean, just for me seeing them, it's so much more helpful because it's interactive, it's easily editable for them as well, so they're not having the issue of if they do expand the boundary, or if there is a lot of sort of new venues, or they want to include, like, I don't know, a theatre or a park, they have to get a graphic designer to edit all of this. They have a lot more flexibility and control. And the thing is, it has like street view, So for yourselves, if you've never visited a place, you know, it can be a lot more interactive and a lot more helpful. And at the end of the day, the map is a tool for you to get an idea of what this place actually is like. If you've got a very small, you know, JPEG that's extremely blurry and maybe has a few dots on it, you're not going to get any sense of what the composition of that town or city is like. So we've seen quite a few on Google Maps, and so far they seem to actually be really helpful. So you may see some more coming through, because I don't know if maybe that's something we might recognise as sort of best practice and recommend to new applicants. We're still kind of thinking about the best way to kind of give that information and a guide on how to do it sort of in the most optimum way. But it'd be good to get your thoughts if you have seen any Google Map ones, or how you feel about it. Would it be something that you think, okay, that would be easier? Is it maybe a bit of a faff? So any feedback on that, just for my own knowledge, if we are going to kind of support that, would be helpful. Kenny?
Yeah, it'd be good to get an example of that, Laura, because I'm one of those that's stuck with the graphic designer. And, you know, I give them my purple flag area, you know, on a piece of paper, and it takes them 4 weeks then to turn it round. You know, and I'm thinking it looks like something that a 5-year-old's done, really. So if I could be in control through Google Maps, even better. And like you say, it gives out more information as well, and it's information in real time. So that might be one to look forward to.
Yeah, mine was really similar. Interestingly, when Malta put forward their first documentation for us to have a look at, when the map came up, it was just one page on the front. And I thought, oh, this is terrible. And then I realized that actually, if you just travel down the outside, there were about 11 maps. And I contacted them and said, you know, how did you do this? Because this is so impressive. And he said, oh, it's all just on Google Maps. Laura said, you know, this is amazing. I can't believe, you know, why other places aren't doing it. So you're welcome to have Maltas, I'm sure, but we'll ask and check with them first. But I'm sure they'd be happy for you to have a look at it. And then you can imagine sunning yourself on the beach in Patcherville. Mandy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we've looked at Google Maps, we found that they're outdated very quickly. So there's actually businesses written on them that are no longer there because they've just stayed on the map. So that's why in the past we've looked and not wanted to use a Google Map, because they're not accurate and they're not up to date.
Okay, interesting point. Laura, maybe we'll have a check through some of the others that have been done and just see how that sits.
Yeah, of course.
I suppose. I mean, Mandy, would you say that if you were doing it within a year, there shouldn't be that many changes, or do you think that? I suppose it depends on the
Google
destination.
Maps, it's when they last did it. They can be like 5 years old. They're not.
Okay.
You know, it's not as though Google are doing them every day. They're out. You know, it takes them quite a long lengthy time to renew the Google Map. So that's for me. So when we looked at certainly doing ours for Altrincham, there's lots of businesses on there that haven't existed for several years. So that's why we just went down a more traditional route and worked with the council on a normal sort of OS map. You know, so.
I mean, it's worth having. I'll have a look at it on this side, because I know with Google Maps you can, like, give different categories to different things. So you wouldn't necessarily have to include businesses that are closed, but you can also just add points. Say, for example, there's a brand new business that opened 2 weeks ago and it's been absolutely bouncing since it's opened, and you want to have that recognised on your map, but they haven't collected that data yet to put the point in. I'm pretty sure with Google Map you can just kind of like put a dot on the place where it is and then just name it whatever you want. So say, I don't know, it's like whatever bar, you could add that yourself as opposed to having to wait for Google. But I think it's a really helpful point on our end, and we can have a look to see, would that be more work that it's kind of worth, or is it something that we can sort of give some guidelines on to do quite easily? So that's really helpful to know, and we'll have a wee look at on our end just to see what we can kind of do to make that a bit easier in the grand scheme.
So Laura, you said you could add them, but can you remove businesses? Because that's what we've found, is there's quite a few old businesses that are no longer open. So if you can add them, that's fantastic. But can you remove the businesses that are no longer there?
So what you can do, if you were making, for example, like a custom map, so you can kind of set like a boundary and stuff. You can select. So say, for example, there's a business that you want to select. You can give it a clear icon, so it doesn't have to be the same that's already on Google Map. You can give it a unique icon and kind of set it that way, as opposed to, so if you maybe had all the restaurants in your town with one exactly the same specific icon, and you've gone through and picked which ones, you can essentially kind of have like a layer. So if you've got the layer turned on, you can see all those restaurants that you've tagged, as opposed to all the businesses that would be in Altrincham. But yeah, it's worth having a look to see if we can maybe give some guidance of, if people do fancy it, the ways of doing it, so you're not having to include businesses that aren't open anymore, because I mean that's just going to be more of a pain if you're trying to go through them all. So yeah, we'll have a look to see what's the best way to do that.
Okay, thanks Mandy, thanks Laura.
Nice.
Okay, nothing more on that one. This next one I think is a bit of an obvious one. It's just about getting opportunities to speak to the on-trade. I think we probably, most of us now, like to get rid of the applicant sometime after midnight and have a nice walk round and a chat with a few people, and try and find out, you know, what's happening within venues, and speak to the managers and people, other people, without the applicant being on your left or right shoulder. And quite often, actually, I found a lot of positives that have come out of that as well. And sometimes it's just sort of just to provide some of that extra feedback into making decisions about how well that town is actually performing on the night, without applicants being there to sort of cover any of the, maybe some of the negative issues. It did backfire on me once from a Bournemouth point of view when I was out in Salisbury, and I went up to a door staff and said, have you heard of Purple Flag? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, well, you know, Salisbury's got a Purple Flag. No, I wouldn't know that. And so you don't know anything about Purple Flag? Nah, I don't. But I wouldn't. I come from Bournemouth. Oh God! I did come clean with the applicant. I did tell him the story. I told him off as well. Said he should know better. Right. Asking questions and getting clarity. Yeah, I think that this is a tool, sort of pre and post assessment in a way. Just a reminder, I guess, that if you have the time, well, I mean, try and make the time, obviously, before we go to assessments, to have a look through, particularly the assessor's comments from the previous 2 assessments, and those ones that are listed on the back of the form, because those are the ones you should definitely be asking questions on, because they're saying, you know, these are things that we've found that are at fault and need attendance, and need sorting out. So we want to ask the question, you know, have we done, what have you done since that report? And I would expect as an applicant that you're doing the same thing, and looking at those questions and making sure that you have done something, not just a week before the next assessment is due, but almost as that report comes in, so that you're starting work as an applicant on it. And we should be teasing that out and trying to find out whether they have or they haven't been doing it. But I think I always find writing a list of all those questions, and whether we ask them before we get them, and you can sort of categorize them into things that they can answer before we get there, some that we want to ask them at the welcome reception at the Q&A session, and some that we want to leave to the being out at night. So it might be something to do with transport. You know, have we there was a comment about taxis or taxi ranks that were not being manned properly. So we don't need to ask them the question, is it being manned properly? But just making a note somewhere that you're going to have a check on that during the night. But also these sort of pre and post questions, I think, quite important, and quite strange if we're not really doing any of those at any time, because it means that to me, it means more that maybe assessors aren't doing enough in terms of getting that report done in the right way. Is everybody happy with that? Is that am I making sense with that one? Colin?
Do the applicants get a copy of our full assessment, or do they just get the result and matters to attend to for the next report, or do they get the full report from us?
They do get the full report. And I think it's a comment we do make certainly in our training sessions, and in the assessors briefing pack. The comment is in there as well, because it is absolutely key that we are happy to put our hands up and say, you know, this is what we're saying. We believe that's true. And if somebody doesn't, or an applicant doesn't feel particularly happy about it, they've got a recourse to say, well, we don't think that's right. It doesn't happen very often, to be honest, but we do get a few now and again. I guess there isn't an applicant who doesn't look through the whole of an assessor's report and sit back in the chair and say, oh, well, that was wonderful. Great, you know, this aren't we fantastic? You know, because they will find things in there that maybe they don't like, and maybe some of them sometimes might hurt a little bit. But it's necessary that they see them. Yeah, we need to be open and honest and upfront about those. You're muted, Colin.
So the points that are raised for attention in 12 months or 2 years' time, they've certainly got plenty of opportunity to investigate those and include them in the subsequent report, haven't they?
Yes, exactly the point. Yeah, great. Okay. I think, Laura, was there anything else on housekeeping? I think that was it at the moment.
Yeah, I think that was everything, John. Yeah.
Okay. So we're doing pretty well. It's just gone 2:30, so it's sort of opened up the floor to everybody. Have a go at me as well. You're talking rubbish, John. Feel free, you know, let's have an open forum. Let's get out there and you know, whatever improvements we can make between us is great for Purple Flag. So whatever comments or issues or whatever that you might have as assessors, this is a great time to provide feedback to us as well, and let us know, particularly from a panel point of view. I noticed Ali hasn't said anything. I'm not sure if he's still with us at the moment. I've got a strange feeling that he's calling from France, so he's probably been in and out and only got half of the information. Mandy, thank you.
So just one thing. When you're marking, you've got the good and outstanding, the excellent. I can't remember what they are. Outstanding and good. I think one of the assessments I've done recently, they were doing some really good stuff, but it's almost like if you're marking it as good, should we as assessors being saying to get to excellent, you need to think about or could be looking at this. I don't know whether we should provide those recommendations, and maybe I think that good and excellent is difficult. So if you mark good as a town, do you then think, right, well, how could I have achieved excellence? What would have got me that excellent mark? Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And you know, we try and tackle this sort of subjectivity question a bit alongside what you're saying. What you're saying is slightly different to that question. You know, the whole purpose for me for Purple Flag is to raise the profile, the attribute, the goodness, you know, of a given location. Whatever we do as assessors, we should be striving to provide that. So that should include information on where they can improve if you feel they can to reach a higher standard, particularly. You might not necessarily want to put that in the content of the report, but it could actually be, by example, be something you could put in the positives at the bottom. You know, we found this destination to be doing this really well and gave them a good mark. We felt that if they did this, they could certainly achieve excellent, outstanding on it. It does, you know, if we're looking at it that way, it does raise the question whether, Laura's probably going to kill me now, but whether we raise a new process for looking at how we can provide that feedback information, because we're trying to tighten down the forms so much that it's, you know, not over wordy, so that we can all look at it, the applicant, the assessor, and the Purple Flag panel, and be able to get through the work and get to the nub of what's being written. And I think we don't really want to mess around with that too much, but I kind of agree with you. I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to provide feedback to someone on it. It could be simply that we say to an applicant, when you've read through the report, if there's anything you want to know, please feel free, you know, we'll put you in touch with the assessor and you can have a quick contact, email or otherwise, just to clarify points and see where you could improve. Because it doesn't make sense. We do want, that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that Purple Flag improves as we go on. It's a good point. Thank you. Alistair made a point there, sorry. While I try and find, let's just have a look. Yeah, so from a panel perspective, we think the standard of assessor reports, but always like ever more consistent reports, lots of detail and good feedback for the location to action. So, you know, from a panel perspective from Ali, that's quite a good comment for you to have from him. Clearly, you know, slightly different to mine. He'd quite like to see a little bit more detail, maybe a little bit more feedback happening. So maybe Laura will have a look at that, what possible avenues we've got for improving it without affecting the overloading the detail on the report. Jared?
Yeah, hi guys, just one quick query. John, I suppose we met last year just to discuss about, and I think it's timely as well as we're talking about Malta and the Netherlands and other stuff like that, that with Purple Flag growing, that how do we inbuild for regional differences, local differences, legislative differences? So obviously here in Ireland, we're using the euro, we have differences in licensing laws, we're going to be changing those licensing laws further, and also there's obviously significant social and cultural differences, and I'm sure the folks in Malta are going to find the same thing. Different currency, licensing laws. Like ourselves, they're a bilingual nation as well. So there's all these kind of factors, and I was wondering where we are with that, and is there going to be scope for some of that to be presented in the documentation, I suppose?
Yes, I mean, certainly that's it's an important point, and actually we are not necessarily trialing something with Malta. We're doing something with Malta that involves producing an assessor briefing document. So we've looked at it from a UK point of view, and looked at Malta from a UK point of view, and written out the things from an overnight visit that shows where some of those differences might be. Having written those out, sent it back to Malta for them to review, and they've now sent back their assessor briefing document. We've got to be careful here that we don't try and force an assessor's thinking simply because, you know, Malta want to say, well, we don't do it like that, so you can't knock us down for it. But at the same time, I think that the comments that have come back are very sound, very sensible. You know, it can be something simply in terms of Malta. They don't have business improvement districts. They don't have it, so don't expect it. You know, but what they do have is a stronger town centre management work, and more commercial work within town centres. And I think similarly for Ireland, it would have been very useful, certainly from my first visit to Ireland, to have had a similar briefing sheet. It took me quite a long time to get round some of the differences that were occurring between the UK and Ireland. I mean, as you say, in terms of licensing with the police, with the Garda, those sort of things are quite key in the change from assessing UK destinations. And for us at this stage to just sort of rely on people going over there and finding it out for themselves, you know, I think the assessor briefing sheets would probably work. Does that cover it enough? I'm not sure. Does it? Is that something that you feel would help, Jared? Or
I think so. Yeah, I suppose
still skirting on the outskirts of it.
Well, I suppose, and it's the same for me. If I was to go over and assess Bristol or Bournemouth or something like that, that I'm aware of, you know, the regional, local, and legislative differences. I think certainly if there's an assessor coming in from outside of Ireland, that, you know, there is some sort of briefing for them that, you know, things are going to be slightly different, that you don't have a local constabulary, you have a national police force, that you have, you know, the road signs are in kilometers, not miles, all this sort of stuff. So, so just simple things like that like might throw people off, because if you're looking at speed limits going, this is a, you know, a 30k zone, obviously 30 kilometers and 30 miles an hour is very different. All this sort of stuff. So absolutely, I think maybe a briefing sheet, if there is an assessor from outside the jurisdiction going to be part of the assessment team. But then I think also just, I'm going to say the weighting, because of the different areas of focus are like very specific. But like I know in some of the documentation there's stuff about like CCTV, which again there's a very different legislative attitude towards use of CCTV in Ireland, but that's in the actual documentation that it's not as applicable, being honest.
Yeah, I think it seems as though it's definitely worth. We did have a discussion about it, didn't we?
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear like what you and Laura were saying about the stuff around the health stats on alcohol, which is something that we had raised.
Yeah.
But there's a few other small things. So again, look, I'd be happy, and I know other assessors here will be happy to help with a briefing document. You know, you're welcome to Dublin or Galway or wherever, and you know, this is you have things you need to know, and it might be a nice thing, a nice welcome thing as part of the documentation. But
I think that would be really useful, Jared, if you wouldn't mind sort of trying to put something together on that. And then I think probably what we would do is similar to Malta, is we'd maybe try and get a couple of UK assessors to go through that who've been to Ireland recently, and see how, you know, how that looked to them, and try and get the picture right from sort of both sides, and then maybe knock it back to you for a final sort of approval. Because I know that worked quite well in terms of Malta, that we had that two-way of doing it. And I haven't done an assessment in Ireland, Laura, for ages. And but yeah, if we got someone who's been there recently from the UK, that could be very useful to us as well in terms of getting that document put in the right place. That would be very useful.
Yeah, well, look, we might
think for others like New South Wales, for instance. You know, that's where it's been great that they've taken over their own system, and they're running it for themselves, and that's easy. But where we still get this mix of assessors coming over, I think could be very useful. Laura,
just to feed on from what you've said there, John, we have done a wee bit of work with Gail, like the very beginnings of doing some work with Gail, to look at the core agenda chart, and like you're saying there with CCTV, things like if there is differences in licensing or schemes that just there isn't really like an equivalent, to kind of understand what alternatives there are that could maybe be that equivalent, or, you know, just to try and work out, because obviously we don't want new applicants going and looking at a core agenda chart and going, okay, well, we don't have that, we don't have that, we don't have that, and maybe feeling put off by sort of being part of the process. So it is something more than happy to like work with yourselves as well as Gail to get an idea of where those regional differences are and how we can just make that process for assessors a lot clearer. Like you're saying, the difference between like miles and kilometers. You know, we want to make sure that people are going to an assessment and they feel prepared. Because I know, I don't know if it was yourself in the past, if you've maybe got an assessor who doesn't really know anything about how sort of things work in Ireland, and you're kind of having to do explanation as well as assessing, which is kind of double the stress. So yeah, just to feed on to the point you've just made there, John, that is something that this year we're going to sort of hopefully get on lock on that one. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a lot of work in terms of running through the core agenda chart and getting all the different data sources together. Particularly, I think, if you're looking at it completely fresh, but it's definitely got to be worthwhile, because if we're running this off, yeah, thanks, Lisa. If you're running this off the sort of the normal process, then it's always going to come awry if we don't have the background information working for us. So I do think that is key, definitely. Sorry, who? Jade, was it Jade who said she could help with that? Yeah. So
yeah,
that was great.
Sorry. Yeah, happy to help.
Thanks, Jade. Super. So that covers, I think, that particular one. Any other general points other than that? Any areas that people are struggling with or think we should change? I think we had at one point feedback from the panel, but I mean, I'm sure we cover that now, because if there's anything that the panel raises, Laura will take that and then contact assessors usually to find out more information, to be honest, particularly before making any decision on an applicant, because that is such an important part of the process. And when we're talking to new applicants or doing a kickstart workshop, that's what we say to them, is that it's not just the assessors, it is the assessors and then the panel, and then the ATCM board is overlooking the panel, so that we have a pretty rigorous process there, and we want to make sure that we keep it that way. Anybody else? Got 12 minutes ahead of time. Always one. Timmy.
A very, very quick one. Are we still pushing out for new assessors?
Laura.
Yes, I think there's been a fair amount of interest that it looks like we probably will do another assessor training sort of, I think April time, did we say, John, roughly?
Yes.
Around about then. So yes, we are still looking for some new assessors. So if you have any recommendations of anyone, feel free to email them over. Be happy to get some more in the pool, definitely.
Yeah, I think we are aiming for April. It would be, I suppose the other question would be where to hold it. The last one was in London. Many thanks to the bid there.
Yeah, I mean, you're always welcome to use Cunard if needs be.
Well, that sounds like a potential
possibility. Get a good space here.
Yeah, and pretty good links, I think, as well, isn't it? With HR2. Oh, sorry, did I say that out loud? Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I can't believe there can't be any more points. Nobody upset with the panel? Hey, Ali, they're happy with us. Right. Thanks ever so much, everybody, for attending. Hope it was useful. We'll grab another one, roughly speaking, May time, is it?
Yeah, probably about May, June. So I think the plan going forward is to kind of do a briefing just after the panel sessions. So if there is any trends that we pick up in submissions, or if there's maybe something we're noticing in assessments, or if there's just something happening generally in the nighttime economy that we think we should probably have a chat about. And obviously for yourselves, it just gives everyone an opportunity to touch base and see how everyone's getting on. So I think about 3 a year will be the goal. So yeah, a few more scheduled for the year.
Is everyone happy with that? I mean, yeah, got lots of nodding going on and thumbs up. In a way, it'd be nice to have more, because we really want to make sure that we get good interaction between assessors and the panel.
Yeah.
Because I know in the past, certainly as an assessor in the past, before I was on the panel, it seemed that they were removed to some ethereal cloud up there, and you didn't really even know who they were. And we really want to make sure that that connectivity is there between us, because I think that's really positive, and we'll grow the family much better and much quicker if we're working together on these things. So thanks very much for coming. Thanks very much for attending, and nice to have so many people here from our sort of key lead assessors. Thanks, Laura, for putting it all together, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot.